Dear students, this is lecture number 26 in supply chain management. Let us discuss the questions of the last class. The first question is the last step in sourcing process is the answer is sourcing, planning and analysis. Second question, most of the manufacturers evaluate the suppliers by price charged by the supplier. So mostly manufacturers give priority to the price, but it may not be the correct strategy. Third one, there is no risk in the activities of sourcing process. True or false? The statement is false because there is some risk involved in sourcing process also. Now let us try to discuss the topic or answer the question in-house or outsource. The decision to outsource is based on growth in supply chain surplus provided by the third party and the increase in risk incurred by using a third party. So, when we deal with the particular function of supply chain system or supply chain management, if you ask the question whether we have to do it by in-house or outsourcing, so we should consider two factors. What is the first one? Growth in supply chain surplus provided by the third party and the increase in risk by giving the job to the third party. So, the first option is a firm should consider outsourcing if the growth in surplus is large, but the risk is somewhat small, that is, small increase in risk. So, in that case, we can go for outsourcing. What is the other option? Performing the function in house is better when, in case of outsourcing, the growth in surplus is small or the increase in risk is very large. So, we have to decide whether to go for in-house or outsource by considering these two factors. So, what are the two factors? Growth in supply chain surplus provided by the third party and the increase in risk by giving the job to the third party. To summarize, we consider profit and risk. If profit is more and risk is small, we go for outsourcing. If profit is not that much good and also risk is also very high, then it is better to do it in-house, that is by the company itself. Third parties increase the supply chain surplus if they either increase value for the customer or decrease the supply chain cost related to a firm performing the task in-house. So when we take a particular task, we compare with if we do it in-house, the third party should increase the supply chain surplus, that is profit, by increasing the value for the customer or by decreasing the supply chain cost. So the third party should try to increase the value for the customer or decrease the supply chain cost. So in these two strategies, the third parties can apply so that they can do better than the company doing the same job itself. Third parties can increase the supply chain surplus effectively if they are able to aggregate supply chain assets or flows to a higher level than a firm itself can. So, what is the way for the third parties to increase the profit or supply chain surplus? The strategy is aggregation. That means if you aggregate the work or task from different supply chain management systems so that the assets or flows rises to a very higher level than a particular firm doing the same thing. So this is the way the third parties can increase the supply chain surplus. In essence, third parties can increase their profit by doing two things. One is increasing the value for the customer or decreasing the supply chain cost when compared to the company doing the job itself, that is in-house. For that, what third parties can apply the strategy called aggregation. So we'll see an example. Suppose a third party is involved in providing transportation service. It is moving the products from one place to another place. A particular company, for example ABC company, wants to move the products from Chennai to Bangalore, for example. So in this case, if the company itself doing this transportation, if the capacity or products to be moved is sufficient enough to fill the particular truck, then it is good for the company. But if the products are to be moved is very lesser than the capacity of the truck, so if it uses a separate truck to move these products, then cost will be very high. Instead of that, the third party which is involved in transportation, what they do the job of aggregation. That means they collect the products from various companies, whichever the concern, they want to move the products from the same place, Chennai to Bangalore. In this case, the third party can do the same job with lesser cost because they have aggregated various transportation works, assets, or flow from different companies. So, aggregation is the slogan for third parties to decrease the cost and also to earn more profit. Aggregation can be applied in various aspects of supply chain management system. Let us see one by one. The first one is capacity aggregation. A third party can increase the supply chain surplus by aggregating demand across multiple firms and gaining production economies of scale that no single firm can do it on its own. This is the most common reason for outsourcing production in a supply chain. We already discussed the term called economies of scale. That means dealing with the bulk items or products. So in this case, when we want to produce the products in bulk, that is economies of scale is increasing, that is number is increasing a lot, so that no single firm can produce the same product at the lowest cost provided by the third party because which is producing the same product in bulk. For example, you take a PC manufacturing company, Dell, or any other PC manufacturing company. They use the Intel processor. That is, they outsource the design and the production of processors to Intel. The reason is Intel is focusing only on manufacturing processors and it is supplying processors to many computer manufacturers, so that what will happen to the number will be very high. That is, the number of processor they manufacture is very high. That is what we call it as economies of scale. So this kind of economies of scale is not available to any other company like Dell or any other computer manufacturer. Suppose if they want to do on its own, it is possible. Suppose Dell wants to manufacture its own processor, it is possible. But what will happen to the cost? The design and manufacturing cost will be very high, and which cannot be matched with the Intel company because Intel company is doing the job, that is same thing, production of or manufacturing processes, but in a large scale. That is, Intel can supply processors at a very lowest cost because of the production economies of scale they achieve as they supply to many computer manufacturers. Next is inventory aggregation. That is, inventory means keeping the products in stock. The third party can increase the supply chain surplus by aggregating inventories across a large number of customers. So again the same principle. So they aggregate the inventory needs from various customers. So the aggregation allows them to significantly lower overall uncertainty. That is, uncertainty in the aspect of whether the product is available or not at a particular point of time or whenever it is required, and also to improve economies of scale in purchasing and transportation. So this is another level of aggregation applied in third party organizations. The next one is transportation aggregation by transportation intermediaries. The third party may increase the surplus by aggregating the transportation function to a higher level than any shipper can on its own. So we know what do you mean by shipper. Shipper is the one who wants to move the products from one place to another place. So a third party can increase the surplus by aggregating the transportation function from various firms, various shippers to a very high level than an individual shipper can do on its own. For example, UPS, FedEx are the transportation intermediaries that increase the supply chain surplus by aggregating the transportation function from various shippers. Again, here also the concept of economies of scale is used in transportation because each shipper wants to move the products in very small capacity, but the transportation intermediary it aggregates, that is it collects shipments from various shippers, so that what happens, the capacity will be sufficient enough to move it in a particular transportation mode. It may be truck or any other flight or train or ship or whatever it is, so that the cost is also reduced because the products are moved in bulk, and the same level of lower cost cannot be achieved by a individual shipper. For example, you assume a company in Tanjavur wants to move a small package from Tanjavur to Chennai. If it does on its own, the cost will be very heavy. But the same small package, if they move it through a particular transportation company, for example, professional courier, they will charge only 100 rupees or 200 rupees based on the weight of the package. So the product will be easily moved from the source to destination, the lesser cost, and the delivery will also be done the next day itself, so that the cost will be very less. How it is possible? Because the courier company or professional courier, they collect, they aggregate shipments from various customers, so that they move the product in very high capacity, and also the cost is also less per unit of the product movement. That is why the transportation intermediaries can aggregate the shipments, and they can provide the service at the lowest cost. A transportation intermediary increases the supply chain surplus when shippers are sending packages or LTL, that is less than truckload quantities, to customers that are geographically distributed. That is, a shipper wants to send packages of small size, that is what we call it as less than truckload quantities, to customers. They are placed in various parts of the country or some other countries also. A transportation intermediary can also grow the surplus for TL shipping, that is truckload shipping, by aggregating across multiple firms. That is, they collect the shipments from various firms which is having unbalanced transportation flows. That means the quantity coming into a region very different from the quantity leaving the region. That is, unbalanced transportation means it is not a consistent or firm uh, forever. So it is changing time to time, where it comes and where it goes also. So all these things can be managed by the transportation intermediary. The next one is transportation aggregation by storage intermediaries. A third party that stores inventory can also increase the supply chain surplus by aggregating inbound and outbound transportation. On the inbound side, they aggregate shipments from various manufacturers into a single truck. So this results in lower transportation cost, which can be achieved by an individual manufacturer. On the outbound side also, they aggregate packages for customers at a common destination, results in a lower transportation cost, which cannot be achieved by individual customer separately. Next one is warehousing aggregation. A third party may increase the supply chain surplus by aggregating warehousing needs of several customers. The growth in surplus is achieved in terms of lower real estate cost and lower processing cost within the warehouse, because the third party is providing the same service, that is warehousing service, to several firms or companies, so that the cost will also be less in terms of rent or owning the uh, land or building, and also the processing cost is also less. For example, Safe Express in India, which is providing third party logistics, and also it owns warehouses throughout the country, which serves for many customers. Next one is procurement aggregation. A third party increases the supply chain surplus if it aggregates procurement for many small players and facilitates economies of scale in ordering, production, and inbound transportation. So, this procurement aggregation is most effective for many small buyers. Particularly in case of small buyers, they will not be able to carry out the procurement process independently because of the cost will be very high. So the third party can aggregate the orders from various small buyers, and it can do the procurement process on behalf of the small buyers at the same time with the lesser cost. The last one is information aggregation. A third party may increase the surplus by aggregating information to a higher level that can be achieved by a firm performing the function in house. So, the third party may involve in aggregating information from various firms than the level achieved by the function done in the company itself, that is in house. So, all retailers aggregate information on products from many manufacturers in a single location. This information aggregation reduces search cost for customers. So, eBags is an example of a retailer that primarily provides information aggregation. That is, they collect the information about the products from various firms, and it is available in a single location, so that any online customers, if they want to search for the particular product, they can get all the record information from the single website itself. Now we will discuss the risk of using a third party. The first one is the process is broken. This biggest problems arise when a firm outsources supply chain functions simply because it has lost control of the process. That is, just like that, if a company outsources the supply chain functions, then the process control may be lost by the original company. The next one is underestimation of the cost of coordination. So if we outsource the functions, certainly there is a need of coordination of activities across multiple entities performing the supply chain task. That is, if you give more and more tasks to third party, the cost of coordination will be very high. The next problem is reduced customer supplier contact. A firm may lose customer supplier contact by introducing an intermediary. The loss of customer contact is particularly important for firms that sell directly to the customers but decide to use a third party to either collect incoming orders or deliver outgoing product. The next risk is loss of internal capability and growth in third party power. If a supply chain system gives more and more functions to third party, that is outsourcing, the company may lose the internal capability and third party will gain the power. The next risk is leakage of sensitive data and information. If we use the third party to share demand information or any other important information like intellectual property or critical information of the company, then the third party may leak the data to competitors, particularly if the third party also serves for competitors, because the third party organization is not only serving for particular firm, it is providing service for multiple firms. So that is why this risk is there. Students, answer for these questions.